Welcome to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive with Dr. Rebecca Risk. Do you ever feel that even though nothing seems seriously wrong and you pass all the medical tests, that you still feel that your health, pain, and fatigue are completely out of control? It doesn't have to be that way. Listen to the tips and suggestions given on our program today and take back control of your health. Now, here is Dr. Rebecca Risk.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Falling Through the Cracks. Today, we're talking with Dr. Cass Ingram. He is a nutritional physician and is joining us today to discuss his new book, The Cannabis Cure. Dr. Ingram, welcome to the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully we'll get some solid information out for your listeners on how they can get well quick.
Well, and I think so. Cannabis is just legal in Canada in October. So a lot of people don't quite know what to do with it. So I thought we could help them out with that. I always ask everybody what inspired them to put the book that we're talking about together. So can you just let us know why you're so passionate about this?
The moms got me going. They were fighting for their autistic and seizure-ridden children and the children that were on Ritalin and anti-seizure medications in a number of states. So in observing that, if the moms are fighting this hard, I've written already 25 books on natural medicine. Let me delve into cannabis, its history, its use in antiquity, and of course CBD oil was becoming a phenomenon. Let me look at that. Let me look at the traditional use, and then I decided there had to be a good book on it, because the fact is cannabis, whether cannabis sativa or the other species indica, which is more marijuana, cannabis is a medicine. It was used historically medicinally. It was very rarely used, if ever, for hallucinatory or addictive. Only maybe the Mongols with the heavy smoking of hashish, which then went into the Middle East, sometimes in India. But it was 99% of the time used as a drug, as a herb, you see. So I thought that had to come out,
Well, I think it's important to talk about it because when we were coming up to the legalization date, I had some people make comments to me about how dangerous this was going to be, that it was accessible, not realizing how accessible it already was and wasn't controlled. So, I was pretty happy that it was going to be controlled and people were going to have access to the CBD part. And you and I are going to talk about, what's the difference is. But can you just tell us a little bit about why marijuana has been banned for so long?
Marijuana was banned strictly for political reasons and actually for financial monopolistic. There was back in the 30s and 40s when it was cut out, there was no evidence that it was causing significant health disorders in Americans or Europeans. But what happened was hemp was grown profusely from the colonial times, about 1800, all the way through until 1930, but the big boys in nylon and cotton, as well as paper, the Hearst cabal, they were threatened by the hemp industry. They wanted rid of it, so they took advantage of the little bit of marijuana smoking that was going on in the music industry and in Hollywood. They made reefer madness. They created a public sort of instigation. And then federally, they banned it, which was the plan all along. But it was done to protect DuPont and their nylon patent, as well as the cotton boys and the paper Hearst mill, paper mill people. That was why. Unfortunately, but at that time, in every doctor's black bag from Victorian times until 1930, they all had cannabis indica tincture or cap pills or what have you. They had it and they were giving it for pain, you see, and nervous. And they regarded it more effective than morphine, a better drug. So the MDs rebelled at the time, but to no avail. We lost it. We lost a valuable medicine that was given orally. They weren't smoking it, you see, and it was gone for almost 100 years, you see.
Well, yeah, it seems a shame to me, especially when we look at the opioid crisis that we're in right now, and that when last time I talked to somebody who went to the emergency room, they were offered morphine, and they were actually already on CBD oil and had been prescribed.
Well, morphine could have killed them.
Right,
They were already on drugs.
And it just seemed like being on CBD oil was like ignored, that you're actually doing something for yourself, and they wanted to give something more because that can't possibly be working, which baffles me, because we know it works and there's a reason why we're trying to legalize, or we have legalized it. And why is morphine okay and that's not, when you
Morphine
look at side
causes
effects?
it's a good point. Synthetic morphine or morphine isolates lead to maybe 250,000 fatalities a year, because a lot of times it's given purposely to take out the individual at the end stage. It may be off, when you add in opiates, another 100,000, 50,000 fatalities in North America. We'd be hard-pressed, even with heavy-duty marijuana smoking, to find 5 fatalities in a year. So what you're dealing with is a big, monstrous pharmaceutical cartel. They have synthesized cannabinoid, and they say that's okay, but that has led to deaths fairly commonly. Whereas the natural form, we don't have any deaths at all whatsoever on either the CBD, which is more isolated, or the crude extract especially. Not possible to get a death with that, or even an illness, or even a disease. So, in fact,
when we're looking at marijuana, I know when people always associate it with, the pothead who's lazy and not doing anything, and I think that stigma still stays. That's why I had those conversations with people about how this is actually a good thing, and all they could see was that the addictive property of it. Is that a concern for us, having just legalized that in Canada?
Well, I'll tell you what the biggest concern with marijuana is. Marijuana has been raised to be addictive, whereas the original species out there were addictive when they made it into hashish, of course, in high concentrated forms. But there are so many clones, or so many species, so many different types that have a high THC. So if you have a 14-year-old, this is the real issue, a 12, 14-year-old that starts pounding the reefers, they can become addicted, and that they can develop a reduction in the brain size at that young age. We don't see that so much in the adults, but I have had to deal with musicians who were heavy marijuana addicts, and they did have problems, with the carbon monoxide and just addiction. So it's never a good idea to overdo anything except the extract. If you have a good quality organic or natural, without any chemicals or solvents, extract, whether it's from marijuana or particularly from industrial hemp, you can't really get into any kind of addiction with that. You can't get into any tissue damages as such, you see. So we have to look at the fine line. For the general public, I don't think smoking reefers or marijuana, whatever you want to call it, smoking medical marijuana, that's not the ideal for the general public. For somebody that's got MS, they're in a wheelchair, they don't really have many options, let them go ahead and do what they've got to do to control their pain. But for Mrs. Smith and Mr. Jones down the street, they're much better off with medical marijuana in the form of drops or capsules, you know what I'm saying? It's just a sensible way to go about it. And there are many types, and we try to get into these types to help your listenership. We will, hopefully.
Yes. That's the next thing I want to get into. You and I have used some terms, CBD oil and THC. What is actually, what does that mean? So just so that people can understand.
Right. Well, the human body has opiate receptors and endorphin receptors. Chocolate gooses the endorphins. Opiates are goosed by wheat, rye, barley, malt, and by alcohol. So, and obviously those receptors, God made them there because we have our own opiates we make. And so when we take morphine or opioids, they do attach the receptors and they overwhelm them and all that. So, but we also have our own cannabinoid receptors. And those cannabinoid receptors can receive the THC, but the reason they're there is not for THC. THC is very powerful. The reason they're there is we make our own cannabinoids. We make them from meat, from cheese, from animal food, believe it or not. Animal food has a fatty acid that's converted to cannabinoid. One of the problems with a strict vegan diet is you can sometimes get anxiety and depression and irritability because you're not eating any cannabinoid precursors. So we have the CB1 receptors, but we also have CB2 receptors, and they receive cannabinoid, but they also receive the active ingredients of things that we love, which many people love marijuana and smoke it for that reason. They get that benefit of some, sensation. But those same receptors that receive the marijuana smoke, but also the drops, they also receive cinnamon, clove, sage, oregano, basil, chamomile, hops, things that we love, and we use a little bit rosemary in our food, have cannabinoids that attach to those CB2 receptors, not CB1, but CB2. So I cover that in the book, that there are other sources of cannabinoid that we could either use inside the supplements with the hemp extract or separately, because they're all activating those same receptors. And the reason you want to keep those receptors in activation is they get weak with time. If we don't take our activators, those receptors fizzle out, and so you lose that opportunity for balance in the nervous system. Think about that. If you have seizures, if you have autism, ADD, HD, stress syndrome, stress psych-out syndrome, if you have depression and anxiety and therefore are turning to pot, for instance, if you have a drug addiction, you have an imbalance in your brain. And when you activate the CB2 and CB1, you get to put the nervous system into balance. And so I'm using a special kind of hemp extract for alcohol addiction, tobacco addiction, marijuana addiction, cocaine addiction, addiction to drugs like Zoloft, Paxil, Xanax, and I have case histories extremely effective because you feel good.
Yeah,
like when people smoke pot,
So you're saying that we have receptors in our body that bind to the cannabinoids. Is that
God made it that way?
Yeah.
You make 2 or 3 different cannabinoids inside. You synthesize them through the liver and through the brain, and then they go into those receptors to keep you in good condition and to keep your mood in good condition. And so, who's going to argue that at the same time the Creator made the cannabis plant so we could harvest it? Don't forget. Historically, in the biblical people, the Hebrews in the Bible, it even mentions they were using some kind of incense and burning something that turns out to be cannabis resin with frankincense. They would mix it with frankincense and myrrh, other spices, and cinnamon, and they would burn it because it gave improved mood and also acted as antiseptic. And this was done in India. They did 2 things with cannabis. They would take it and stuff it in milk with turmeric and cinnamon and sugar and drink it, okay? Mm-hmm. Or they would make it incense. So where's all this stuff about having to constantly smoke it with the high THC, They weren't doing that.
Well, as a herbalist, I want us to use things that are more natural. I mean, it's not that I'm against medicine. Like pharmaceuticals, they have their place. But if we have an option that is more natural, because you just compared the synthetic version to actually having killed people, the synthetic cannabis. So. And why would we make a synthetic version when we have a plant that is doing this? And if we can use this plant and if it's been there for a long time, I don't see where the harm is, especially when we can control it.
There's no harm. The doctors were fighting back that they were going to lose their cannabis because it was so valuable to them back in the 20s and 30s. And we have had a huge loss in civilization to people who end up on the Zolofts and the Paxils and the Xanaxes and the Valiums when they could have done this. Case history. I had a guy, 25 years. He has 2 PhDs, so don't tell me how he could do this. 2 PhDs, but still was on Zoloft for 25 years. He developed brain damage. I took a look at him. I said, "Doctor, what for? Get off of it." And I can't. So I gave him some of this crude extract. It's called hempenol. I gave him the super strength, which has 3,000 milligrams of crude extract of hemp in the bottle. I said, take this crude extract of hemp stock or hemp, agricultural hemp. I mentioned to him it's organic, it's certified organic, it's extremely high quality, and you get all the terpenes plus the cannabinoids. I want to talk about terpenes.
Okay.
So this is a raw extract.
Well, let's take a quick break. Let's talk about that right when we get back. We're talking today with Dr. Cass Ingram, and we're discussing his book, The Cannabis Cure. And we'll be back shortly.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Healthcare has been a major part of news stories today, with one thing that has been consistent: inconsistency. Both healthcare providers and patients have to work around and get used to a constantly changing set of rules and issues. Nurses have historically been left out of this decision-making. Listen to Once a Nurse, Always a Nurse, Exploring the World of Nursing with host Leanne Meyer. Health professionals, we invite you to share your ideas and experiences while listening to experts in various areas of nursing. Listen Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Health and Wellness.
Everything is energy. It's all connected. Your energy can be seen as the foundation for your life and impacts all areas of living. Do you realize that your thoughts have the power to affect how you show up? Tune in for Healthy Energy with Margot, featuring host Margot Nielsen. Margot and her guests will show you that connecting to your energy is vital to your health, relationships, money, and more. Listen live every Monday at 12 noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel.
Now you don't have to stay linked to your desktop or laptop. Take Voice America on the go and listen anywhere. Get our mobile app for iPhone, BlackBerry, or Android at the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Cass Ingram, and we're discussing his book, The Cannabis Cure. So, Dr. Ingram, before the break, you were going to get into explaining terpenes. Did I say that right?
Yes, the terpenes, along with the cannabinoids. For this case history, he took the Zoloft off. He then started taking the hempenol under the tongue, which is basically raw, crude, supercritical hemp extract that has the terpenes, high terpenes, plus the cannabinoids. He's able to stay off the Zoloft. That's 25 years addiction, very difficult to do. And then he says he gets some downs. Then if he goes and puts some more drops under the tongue, he stays through it. He then ran out, and he went and bought the standard CBD oil made from the cloned or isolated CBDs, but where it's not raw and where the terpenes are largely disrupted, because a lot of times they use hexane, butane, heat, and all that. But anyway, he said he could not get stabilized on the refined type, or CBD. He had to go back to the crude type to keep off the Zoloft. And we're very hopeful, cross our fingers, that he will never again go, so he can go back and get a job in his field. Now, let's talk about those terpenes. Let's talk about the traditional use. The traditional use has never been to refine, never, ever refine cannabis. Never. It's a delicate plant. As soon as you hit it with a lot of heat or refinement, nowadays using solvent extraction, you destroy the terpene fraction. The cannabinoids hold up pretty good, but the terpenes are destroyed. Think about this. Ibn Sina, Avicenna, in the 1100s, he used to take people with anxiety and neurosis, sit them down, and they would juice the cannabis and pour it over their heads and soak their heads in it, as a treatment. They were using a whole food extract. So the terpenes, back to that, those are biological molecules that are very similar to gasoline. In other words, they're very malleable, they are very penetrating, but they're a natural terpene that you find in essential oil. When you put essential oil in water, you see it has that rainbow shimmer on top. That's the terpenes. But anyway, so the terpenes, they are like worms, like a living worm. If you ingest them, they worm their way through the blood-brain barrier. and do the job that they need to do on seizures and anxiety and neurosis and attention deficit, autism, depression, and, of course, drug addiction. But when you cook them, you take that earthworm and you turn it into a crusty little creature on a sidewalk, you see. So I've been very big, and I'm the only voice left, saying we have to have the terpene component. It's, say, 12% CBD, 3% terpene. Don't kill the terpenes. They are the ones that are neuroregenerative. So if you have a stroke, if you have brain damage, if you have Alzheimer's, MS, Lou Gehrig's, then you do want the terpene fraction. Now, take it another step. The scientific study done by the investigators in 2014 on 313 seizure children, the study was so impressive, it about blew the brains off the pharmaceutical industry. You know, with seizure medication, you're just maintaining them. 50% of the children saw a major improvement in the number of seizures, and 10% had it eradicated, and that was with a refined CBD oil. When we have used clinically the crude extract, we're seeing 100% elimination so far in children with seizures. That's the difference between the terpenes, which are neuroregenerative, and just cannabidiol, which is CBD. 100% improvement versus 10%. 100% reversal versus 10%. My general impression is try to use the herbs in the most unprocessed way possible. You know, natural. Well, all natural.
So I just want to point out, because you said, of course, 14-year-old pot users will cause some issues with their brain, and so you're giving children this product. What is the difference with what you're doing and what traditionally, you know?
Here's the difference.
Yeah.
Here is the difference. THC, my friend. THC and marijuana cloned and raised to be addictive and hallucinatory. That was an industry, a secret industry at that time because of the banning. Mm-hmm. So the difference between that and organically raised agricultural hemp, you can't compare it. You'd have to smoke a joint the size of a telephone pole to get high on agricultural hemp. It's rope hemp, it's clothing hemp, it's paper hemp, it's hemp seed hemp. No, you can't compare it. So if a child, as the mothers have been battling for, is given either CBD oil or particularly the crude extract, there's no toxicity like brain damage toxicity. You don't get that. It's not possible.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I wanted to point that out because I know that not everybody is understanding that now that this is legalized, that there is actually a difference. What you take for your pain is not going to make you high unless you choose to do so, unless you're taking THC, and that's where there's still that stigma. And I think it's really important that we understand that you could take CBD oil and drive and work and not have those issues. You're still functioning as a person. A better person because you have no pain.
Let me clarify it a little bit.
Yeah.
CBD oil is going to be a lot safer, obviously, than Marinol and synthetic. Mm-hmm. But the people should know that the safest type is when you use just the full spectrum crude. So something like, I'll just hate to give brands, but something like hempanol, which is what I was forced to endorse in my book after my experience. I took CBD oil. I've never taken marijuana. I took it first time, fair dose, under the tongue, and I didn't feel like getting up out of my chair. I actually got kind of I'm 60-some, a little bit of a stone sensation. Mm-hmm. And so if you refine the CBDs too high, then you can get some little funny business. And so that's when I turned to the manufacturers and I said, would you send me some of the crude extract with no refinement, no solvents, no heat, and I'll tell you how they process it. And then I found that to be universally safe, for children. That's why I've been recommending it. I don't, mm-hmm. without hesitation, I recommend it for children. But I'm not sure if every child will react to CBD. So you want to go a little slower if you're doing CBD, but if you're doing crude extract, you can use it pretty much, with impunity.
Let's talk about how to take it then. I think that's important as well. There's actually a lot of rumors and a lot of ads on the radio about actually mixing CBD with alcohol and cigarettes.
Oh, that would not be a good idea.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea whatsoever to mix CBD with pot smoking, with especially with alcohol, and with any other drug. It's the purpose of the CBD products, or particularly hempenol, my favorite for drug addiction, is to detox people from drug addiction, from alcohol. I mean, the objective is health improvement, not just monkeying around with your sensations. If you want to do that, go smoke pot. I mean, if your objective is to help your children or your adults or your grandparents or whoever with pain and inflammation, with anxiety and neurosis, with addiction to SSRI drugs or opiates, like I had this guy on opiates. He fell 50 feet from a pine tree in Vancouver Island to his feet, wasn't very smart, it could happen to anybody, and he crushed up his legs. So he's been on opiates for 30 years. I put him on the super strength. In 30 days, he ditches the opiates. He's never went back. And that's what we're trying to do, is help, gives people another herbal medicine. I like cannabis because it's another part of our repertoire for specific indications. So I can even tell you all the major indications of it, you see?
All right.
I mean, it's opiate and alcohol addiction and addiction to pharmaceutical drugs. It's neurological conditions, MS, Lou Gehrig's, Parkinson's, and brain cancers and schizophrenia. It has a big value in obsessive compulsive and anxiety and depression, so that group. It's a very effective agent for migraine headache, especially when you combine it with the wild oregano. There is such a thing out there, the wild oregano / cannabis combination. Very powerful. It's very effective for glaucoma and for plantar fasciitis. It's a very good bone density agent. There's good work showing it increases the density of bones even after fractures. Obviously, the crude extract with the terpenes, that's going to be the best for nausea, vomiting, digestive disorders. In fact, I had some pretty bad heartburn the other day, and I took about 20 drops under the tongue, and it took it out, you know. Those are the big platforms. Now, Lyme disease, because of putting the nervous system into balance, and also its anti-pain properties. Let's not neglect the anti-pain. Turmeric is great for the inflammation, for instance. Cannabis is very good for pain, any kind of pain syndrome, because of modulating the nervous system.
So let's say somebody had Parkinson's, which is a progressive illness where they lose control of their body. What would they expect to find when they started taking this?
Well, when I gave this crude extract to a Lyme Parkinsonian case with such severe bilateral tremors that the individual could not write his signature, after about 4 weeks, he was able to write his signature, and he had about an 80% reduction in the tremor, which I thought was really very good. We don't know for sure if by itself cannabis or its extracts will take out Parkinson's, but what I found is that there is a certain neuro-regenerative property of the terpene fraction. So you will get some benefit in MS, Parkinson's, and sometimes in Lou Gehrig's. It may not be the full thing. You may need to do other things like turmeric, oregano oil, to really, because Parkinson's and MS are frequently caused by infection of the brain and the brain stem. I hope you know, I think you do. We have been finding the Lyme spirochete inside the brain of Parkinson's, MS, Lou Gehrig's, and Alzheimer's cases. About half the cases.
I'm very aware, but you know, at the same time, people are looking for symptom relief, even if they're going down the Lyme road and treating that as part of their complex. And, especially when they start treatment, it takes a long time to get that under control. And it's nice to know that there is something that, you said within 4 weeks, his symptoms were under control, which I think usually the medication doesn't.
No, the medication is not neuroregenerative. That's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
See, there's good work on beta-caryophyllene, which is the key terpene in unprocessed hemp extracts, and also is the smell of marijuana, by the way. This is also the smell of cinnamon and clove, sage, oregano. I mean, who would ever eat a pizza without oregano? We're not crazy. Who's going to ever have cappuccino without cinnamon, or a cinnamon roll without cinnamon? So we love that aroma. We love that taste, and that's the caryophyllene. That particular substance, BCP, whether in cinnamon extract or cannabis extract, what have you, that has been found to not only repair damaged neurons, like from a stroke or Lyme attack or Parkinson's, what have you, but also to cause the development of new neurons. So, like you said, some symptom control, but potential for reversal of disease is there, especially if we've got the terpene component biologically active. Unfortunately, with most of the CBD oils right now, that's largely destroyed. But so that's the concept: is neuroregeneration and neural repair. Cannabis does do that. Yeah.
Well, that's encouraging, and I hope that we get some studies on that, because, of course, without multiple studies, it's not going to be followed through on to help people enough. And now that it's legal in Canada and it's getting legalized across the U.S., it is becoming more available, and so people can choose that even if their doctors aren't choosing it for them, which I think is great, because
and I don't even know what the law is in Canada on allowing drops. I understand that Health Canada has been grousing around saying we're going to catch and fine and attack anybody that has the drops or the capsules, and I don't know on what basis other than to protect the pharmaceutical houses. I don't know what else. Why else would they be harassing people?
Well, the CBD is it's actually legal in October, so we have access to it, and you don't need a prescription anymore. Yeah.
Okay, well, that would be ideal. I know that I have seen some health food stores that in Canada that have two things. I've seen it, hempenol and something called cannacumin. They both have the full-spectrum crude. It's not even CBD, so somebody wants to argue it. This is just a botanical, isn't it? Because you're taking the hemp, you're extracting it from organically grown material, you're taking the crude muck and putting it in olive oil, and then it ends up in a bottle. I mean, what's that? It's strictly a grandfathered botanical that has been used since 10,000 BC in some form. And so by all the cultures, Pharaoh, India, China, the Middle East, the Mongols, who could argue it? It'd be somewhat ridiculous.
I think it does get argued, but that's okay. That's our human nature. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking today with Dr. Cass Ingram, and we're discussing his book, The Cannabis Cure. We'll be back shortly.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Are you tired of the healthcare system only treating your symptoms and never addressing the root cause? Discover how integrative medicine can resolve health issues through dietary and lifestyle changes and the use of natural supplements. Increase your energy, memory, mood, immune system, sexuality, and more. Join Dr. Sunil Pai and Maureen Sutton to help you take back your health with natural, evidence-based solutions. Tune in every Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time and 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Voice America Health and Wellness Channel.
Addiction can affect our relationships, our families, our home, and work lives, but most importantly, ourselves. The recovery process can do wonders in the lives of people suffering from active addiction and also for those that love them. It's not just 12-step programs, but so much more. It's learning how to live life on life's terms. If you can relate to these issues or love someone who does, start with yourself. Start by tuning in to Miracles in Recovery with host Ray Lynch, Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. Hope is in your corner.
Have you become a member yet? Sign up now to become a member of Voice America. It's always free and easy. Plus, you get to take advantage of some great member benefits. Get unlimited access to millions of hours of on-demand content across all of our channels. Keep track of your favorite episodes, shows, and hosts in your own customizable library. Find out what shows you might be interested in based on your favorites. Plus, you get insider access with our newsletter. Membership gives you more. Sign up at voiceamerica.com and click register at the top right.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Cass Ingram, and we're discussing his book, The Cannabis Cure. So, Dr. Ingram, one thing I know that you touch on in your book is autism, which is a disease that is increasing, and there isn't much help for it. Does cannabis do something for autism?
Yes, I love the natural, organic, solvent-free cannabis. Let me emphasize that for our children. Rich in the terpenes for any childhood neurological condition, whether it be Ritalin's too much, or the kids are getting addicted at a young age to things, or the hardcore autism, ADHD, Tourette syndrome conditions. I like it. I'm going to have to recommend the crude extract, though, for children. I just won't be recommending CBD. I'd rather see them do the hempenol for that group. And you should be able to use it freely, rubbing it on the bottom of the feet, on the shins, on the thighs, taking a few drops twice a day internally, maybe the capsule form, little teeny capsule. And I had a kid with seizures. He was 7. He'd had seizures since about 1 year, and nothing would work. So he was on medication. So we gave him this hempenol, and hempenol CF specifically, which has no oregano in it. And really, it only took about a week before it was completely eradicated. I mean, that's how effective these terpenes are on the brainstem. So, and the idea that you could rub it on the bottom of the feet and on the shin and up and down the spine and on the chest and get it into the lymphatics, not just oral, that's pretty novel. So I would encourage moms, and if they can't find this type, if they're going to do CBD, make sure you get one that's not solvent extracted. That's going to be hard to do.
That's important. So when people are, that's one thing. People can get CBD oil, but they don't know what to ask for and what to look for.
No, they don't. And the idea of using something that's been extracted with butane and hexane for a little teeny child is not conductive. Furthermore, now the other thing with children that we see is if they have like arthritis or pain and inflammation or juvenile arthritis, they've got to have hempenol or CBD if you can get a good one, because the option is drugs and acetaminophen and poisonous opiates. So, and children with insomnia can sometimes benefit. Insomnia is a big category for cannabis extract. And so is hops and cinnamon. Remember, we said that other things with cannabinoid. Chamomile has cannabinoid. We like chamomile. It calms us. We like cinnamon. An old ancient remedy was 2 teaspoons of cinnamon in hot milk as an anti-insomnia drug. And, in ancient Greece, they used oregano for insomnia. It's very rich in cannabinoid.
So you talk about mixing the CBD with other things. What is the reason for that?
Anything with a cannabinoid.
Okay.
So that if you have a synergistic effect, you see, cannabis only has so many arenas that it's extremely effective for. But if you synergize it with a bit of cinnamon, some clove, perhaps rosemary, oregano, it becomes even a more potent drug for inflammation, for nervous system diseases like MS, Lou Gehrig's, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, Bell's palsy. We are using a combination, oftentimes, of wild oregano raw supercritical with hemp/cannabis raw supercritical. Our research is showing that combination is more effective for inflammatory disorders than just the cannabis alone. When we talk about cinnamon and hops, then that's a great combination when you want to sedate someone. So if you want to give some good insomnia support or some anxiety support, then that would be a good triage. And there is a product out, actually, Hempenol PM, for instance, that has the cinnamon, the chamomile, the hops, and the cannabis together. But regardless, we're going to see more and more where people are taking cannabinoid-rich plants and combining it with cannabis. Cannabis has 80 cannabinoids. Nothing can match it, in terms of total mass. But, yeah.
So by mixing them together, does that make the effectiveness just greater for what you're trying to do with it?
Yes, it does. It really does for certain conditions. As I mentioned, if you were to take just the cannabis by itself, it's relatively mild. But when you add in these other potent spices, you're getting this major synergy and a more aggressive taste. Plus, you're getting other sources of BCP. Remember, we talked about the all-important terpene beta-caryophyllene, which is the one for neuro-regeneration. And that's the big daddy cannabinoid that's in the cinnamon, the cloves, the sage, the rosemary, and so forth. So I like the idea of even if you did this, if you took your CBD or your hempenol and you had a couple teaspoons of cinnamon in a hot drink, you'd see a potency. You'd see a potentizing of it, of that, and so it's interesting. So, in my experience, cannabis is very effective for nerve degeneration, for pain, for Bell's palsy, for autism, seizures, attention deficit, for chronic pain, and for addictions. Those are its big arenas.
So one thing I know as well that it's used for is mood disorders, anxiety, depression, PTSD. What results do people see there?
I've seen enormous results with women who have 3 kids and soccer momming and super stressed and 2 jobs. They're benefiting from a few drops twice a day. We're seeing people who are stressed out at their work feeling less stress. So and I've had some hardcore anxiety cases that are taking this, who have improved and who've been able to wean themselves with their doctor's care off the medication. It's quite effective for stress and anxiety. There's no question about it. Don't forget that other initiation, migraine headache, especially the type that happens to have the wild oregano, as hot as that is. That combination, remember the ancient Greeks, they used oregano and they used cannabis for migraines. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, here's a phenomenon. Me, case history. So I'm pretty productive. I've written already 25 books, but now I'm writing 7 at once. I attribute it to 2 things. Plus, I'm writing a 1,000-page book called Textbook of Natural Remedies, or Textbook of Natural Cures. I've been wanting to write it for 20 years. I finished my book on osteopathic medicine. I just finished a book on the coconut fat miracle, and then another one now on tree resins from the northern forest. So how am I doing all this? I attribute it to 2 things. I'm a fan of hempenol with the oregano and hempenol without, under the tongue, and I pound the PM form. I pound it at night, 5 capsules every night to knock myself into REM sleep, and now I'm so much more productive because I get the deep REM factor going. Maybe if We need to testify to the truth. I'm testifying to my truth. I'm 5 times more productive as an individual since I've been on cannabis. So those who want to beat it up all you want. I'm not changing. I'm sticking with this stuff.
Well, I think that's good to hear. I mean, especially with the idea of the pothead who's sitting on the couch and not doing anything. You're saying the opposite. And with the reason why I brought up the stress and the anxiety and depression is that that's rising in our world. And although that's because we need to make some changes to our toxicity and the way our community is, until those get implemented and people recognize that, we do need help. And to think of people being on medication when there's something natural that might be able to help them, I just think that's a better option.
It is, and we lost almost 100 years of use of that fantastic cannabis sativa and indica, natural medicine supreme for the neurological health and for minimizing pain and then making you feel good. The feel-goody effect of a deep night of sleep, the feel-goody effect of taking this for immediate mood improvement, and the general neuro-regeneration so that you don't succumb to the alcohol. You don't even want it. You don't want the tobacco. You don't want the marijuana high-dose THC. You don't want the SSRIs. You don't want the opiates. You want rid of it. So if you're on it, you get rid of it because you can't handle the poison anymore, all because of crude cannabis extract. Yes, CBD is great, but you're going to get 10 to 15% on the disease syndrome. So it's going to focus on the seizures, it's going to focus on some of the stress and but if you want the 90% plus, all the things I talked about, you have to move to the crude extract. If you want the creativity, it's even proven by an Israeli study. They found that the crude extract does not have a bell curve. The problem with the CBD is you have to keep taking it. Let me tell you the difference. When you take the crude extract, it induces the neuroregeneration. You get the positive benefits, then you don't need it so much. You don't even need to take it but once or twice a week because you already get the benefit inside the brainstem. And you don't need a lot of cannabinoid anyway. You don't need a lot of cinnamon, sage, rosemary, oregano, cannabis, right?
Yeah, well, which is way better. I mean, then you're not dependent on something all the time that you can't travel with.
It's amazing to me. I am astounded beyond even my book. I have to write another edition maybe in a year or two as to what potentials there are for the human race. No wonder they had it in the churches and they were, you see the Catholic Church with that thing they whisk back and forth in the smoke. That used to be cannabis with frankincense and myrrh. Come on. We need this stuff. I'm even hopeful that one day somebody's going to put out a proper, incense that we can burn in our home. So it's time.
So you talk about sativa and indica, and we're almost at the end of our show, but if you can just very quickly tell us, we didn't get into that. We got a little distracted.
Sativa is the crude. Sativa is agricultural hemp, which is now fortunately grown organically by a few companies are bringing out the organic kind. That's the kind that they make rope. Indica is technically the pot. Call it pot because they grow it in a pot indoors. So the smaller plant is indica. The big monster is sativa. Let's get our drugs from the sativa, and if they can make a good quality marijuana without solvents, I'm waiting. That would also be a good medicine for people.
Yeah, I agree. So the sativa and indica also, I think people react to them differently, if I'm correct.
Well, again, don't forget that the old indica may have been good back in the 4th century BC. But they've cloned it, recloned it, to push that THC up. That's why I'm staying away from it. And if you're a footballer or you're a cop, you can't have the THC in your system anyway. So I'm suggesting that the general public find crude extract from organically raised cannabis, free of solvents, from the sativa species. Then you don't have any THC. I didn't make that clear. There is no THC. The amount is so minimal, by the time they make a 1-ounce bottle or a capsule, there isn't any in there. But that's not true of marijuana. If you take and make a marijuana tincture, you're loaded with THC. So the big difference.
Yeah, that's good to know. So if anybody wants more information, how can they get a hold of you or your book?
Well, they can call 1-800-295-3737, 800-295-3737, or go to AmericanWildFoods.com, www.AmericanWildFoods.com. You should be able to view the book. I'm not saying buy anything, but you can have a look at the book, the back, cover, front. You can look at the crude extract and study that. See if it makes sense to you.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I enjoyed this.
And in Canada, we do ship directly from Mississauga, as well as in the U.S. we ship from Chicago, so people can get the book. And I would recommend coming to me for the book versus Amazon. Amazon's kind of ruined the book business, so I'm telling people, support the little guy, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, you betcha. My pleasure.
If you want more information about my story and what I went through, you can see that on my blog site at dr-risk.com. Don't be sure to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, or your favorite social media platform. And feel free to send me an email at nancicalgary@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening today. Be sure to make today a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive. Please join Dr. Rebecca Risk again next Monday at noon Eastern Time and 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel. We'll talk more next week.